Hi everyone, welcome back to Control Alt Delete tutorials. We are continuing on with our character rigging series. Our next step here is working on the spine. The spine itself is a fairly simple setup, so we should be able to get through this one rather quickly. And the main thing that the spine is going to be using are constraints. That looking at our character rig as it is, for animating purposes, you don't want your animator to have to go and search and try to click on joints. Some of them can be really hard if you have a lot of complex things going around in them to select. And frankly, in a really good character rig, you would never be touching the joints when you're animating. You would have a control selected that controls the animation that is either moving or rotating something for you. So that's what we're going to set up for the spine. So the animator will not have to select any joints. They'll have a bunch of control icons to grab. Now, for the control icons we're going to create, they literally can be anything you want. Most rigs will be curve-based, some form of a curve control, because a curve does not render. It will not show up in your render, so it's something later when your animator is done and is rendering, they don't have to turn and hide something off. It automatically doesn't render for them. They're also nice because they're not bulky and they don't really get in the way visually. Now, your curve controls for your character rig can literally be anything, any shape that you want. I'm going to use circles just as kind of keep it nice and simple for this character to go around their torso, but you could design some crazy shapes to go around the character's hips and chest, make them look separate from each other. Controls could be along the character's back, just the back, not the front. Again, it's really you as the designer and what you want them to look like. So to start off with, I'm going to create a control circle, and this being a NURB circle. So going up to my create menu, NURBS primitive, circle, click and drag it out, I have a circle. And the very first one will be the root control. So to help align these, make them much easier on yourself, again, you can use V to snap. Again, this is V for victory. If I hold down V with my move tool, I can click and drag and snap it to one of your joints. Now again, if you ever have trouble when you're snapping, if it looks like it's snapping to the model, go ahead and just hide your model for that moment. So that way you can kind of see it a bit clearer. I'm going to be, and I can snap to my root joint. Now the size of these controls, again, it's really up to you as the designer. If my character default was T-pose, this size would actually be pretty fine. But since my default has her arms down at an angle, I'm going to make this a bit smaller. Again, you're never scaling the object. If you need to make something smaller, either use your original creation information, such as the radius, or right-click the object and go into Control Vertex and change it from there. Again, never scale, because if we scale this object, it's going to carry it down into the parenting and it's going to skew and you're just going to get all messed up, so just scale very bad. So I'm just going to go over my inputs, my radius, make it a bit smaller, maybe a bit more. You want it big enough so it's outside your character's geometry, so it's something easy for the animators to grab. And again, you are snapping the pivot to the joint that is creating it. So even if your icon was way over here in the back, something that was really big and fun and decorative, you would still take your pivot, snap your pivot to that joint. The pivot is what's most important. So my pivot of this control is at my root. So I'm going to rename it root control. Now, since these are the spines along the center of your body, you don't have to worry about left or right. And if you're going to reuse your shapes, before we connect anything, we're just duplicate them up and get them all created for us. So I'm going to just do Control D to duplicate. And I am going to snap this to the joint right below. So again, V for victory to snap, and going to snap it to my main hips joint. That this is going to be my hips control. I'm only going to do one. It's going to control both sides of the hip for me. And we're going to be able to use this to actually shake and kind of dance our hips. Again, think of the idea if your character is standing, leaning kind of to the side, like their weight's really only on one side of their body. You want to be able to rotate your hips to show that. So I'm going to rename it hip control. Now, since these two are so close together, I am going to change the size of this one, and I'm also going to change the shape of it. So that way I can define what is my root control, which is going to be the largest, easiest one to grab, and then my hip control, which is something that I will be animating with, but not as major as my main root. So I'm going to make this one just a bit smaller and then change its shape slightly. Now whenever you're changing the shapes of these curves, when again you go to Control Vertex, if you click and drag over and it thinks you're highlighting a joint, again the idea of I do a click and drag for a selection, if your little marquee selection goes over a joint, Maya has a selection hierarchy that's automatically going to switch to that. So that might be why if that happens to you. Something that you can do to prevent that is while you know you're working in only curves, I can go up to my selection modules. Mine right now is defaultly closed. It has this little tiny arrow to expand it. These are all the types of objects you can select in your scene. And I'm going to click on joint so that way it turns it off. So that way I can't select these joints right now. So when I go and right click to my Control Vertex, it's only going to select my control vertices. So again, I'm going to make this like the tiniest bit smaller, scaling all of my control vertices, but most importantly, I'm going to change the shape of it. I'm going to grab basically every other control vertex, scale it in, so I've got a bit of a different shape happening. So this is representing my hips. In some rigs, you'll see it's actually even kind of lowered, that you can grab like the ones in the middle and bring it lowered so it's kind of like a pelvis shape. You can do that. If I grabbed these on the side, extended them out a bit, kind of brought them over so you know this is like really referring to the pelvis. That's a fun, simple way to change the shape but still keep it rather simple. Again, as long as I know that this is now representing a different control, that these are going to be my hip controls. Again, pivot is at the main hip section. So I'm going to go up and start duplicating to do the rest for my spine. Again, going back from my original nice, clean, simple circle, I'm going to choose Control D. Again, using Move, snap it up to the first spine joint, so this will be Spine 1 control. Since there are multiple spines, we do need to keep the O1 in it for the controls, because we're going to have multiples of them. Again, to help differentiate, I'm going to make this one just a bit smaller. Not going to worry about changing the size on this guy. Just going to make it a bit smaller. So that way, again, I can tell what is my defined one, and then what is my lower one. Again, I could even maybe take to help break them apart, make this one, oops, did grab the back, guys. Make this one kind of an oval. Okay, I'm missing control vertices. There, now everybody's in there. All right, so I can make this one more of an oval shape. So maybe ovals represent my spine. Again, find ways to differentiate. It can be curves you make on your own on the side, doesn't matter. Just as long as you, the designer, can tell the difference, and then it's easy enough that the animator will be able to tell. So I've got spine 1. Just gonna duplicate these up. So I'll have spine 2, spine 3, and again, my character has a spine 4. Yours may not. And just rename these quickly. Spine 2, spine 3 control, and spine 4 control. Now I will again change the sizes of these going into the control vertices. Again, especially this one, you can see it's cutting into her arms. I really don't want that to happen. So this one will be much smaller. Making sure I got all of them. Scale it in. Again, we'll make it kind of an oval. Now, since it is going through the front of her chest, I will grab just those guys, bring them forward so they can grab them there. Do the same for the middle one. This is her kind of really thin part of her torso. This one can afford to be smaller. Oval. And again, grabbing the front so my animator can see it nice and clear. It looks like I forgot one. There it is. And then same for the second one. Just make it a bit smaller and a bit more like an oval to break it apart. There, that way you can again really see a definition of them changing. Now I'll need a couple more. I need one for my chest joint up top. So I'm going to go back to my good old root, duplicate, snap up. This will be my chest control. Okay, this is where your main shoulders and everything are going to be coming from. With this one, I do want to show the difference between my spine controls and my chest. Because again, this is a place where you can have some major turning, major movement happening. Again, it's the idea this is where your arms are going to be connected in later. So just again, show some difference between your spine. Kind of change your shape a bit. Kind of work the idea of the pelvis. Again, grab one of these, duplicate up for the neck. And making sure that is centered on her neck joint. And again, make smaller. With mine, whenever you do a duplicate Control D, it duplicates the shape, but not any of its history, not any of like the radius and information like that. If you were going to do a duplicate special through your edit menu, you can actually tell it to keep that history, so it would have radius every single time. And then I want one last for my head. Now your head is special. Again, you can put it at the base of your character's head. You could put it at the top of their head, like a little halo. You can make it some big, giant, crazy smiley face thing, really whatever you want. But again, what's important is you're not snapping it to that top joint. No matter what the size is, whatever your shape is, what you want it to look like. Again, I could make it like a little angel halo for her, but it's the idea that that pivot is snapped at the bottom of the head. Make sure I'm not snapping the right thing. There we go. Nope, I'm in component mode. No wonder you're not working. I'm sorry. Scale that back up. I think I'm changing the pivot of my transform. Alright, so the pivot of this control for the head has to be at the base of the head. And think of the idea of where you are actually rotating your head from. It's down here at your neck, right underneath your chin. Turn your head back and forth, crack your neck. It's down here, not at the top of your head. We want the gizmo up there, so it's nice, easy to grab. It's recognizable, but the pivot is down here at the neck. So again, you can play with your shape if you want. If you don't like, fix the halo, make it all pretty, turn it into a crown, whatever you like. The pivot is at the base of the neck. So let me rename that this is my head control. Again, go back, make sure I do the same for my neck control. And my chest control. And now I have everything named. So I can set everything up to connect and actually do something. So, again, as I mentioned, the connections for these are going to be constraints, which we're going to be working with the joints. So up in that selection module, if you turned joints off, make sure you turn it back on by clicking on that button so I can select these again, or else it's going to be really difficult with what you're doing. And with a constraint, the order of your process is you're always going to select the controller first, and then select the second object, which is going to be the object that is being constrained, the one you are actually controlling. So in the terms of these controls for the rig, you're going to select your curve-based controller first, and then shift select the joint that you're looking at actually using this for. Again, the idea of when I want to rotate my head, I want to select this curve. So I select my curve first, shift select your joint. Again, this is a constraint, so you're going to go up to your constraint menu, and we are going to Orient Constraint. Oh, good. I'm glad it did this. This doesn't always happen, but if you are constraining something and your joint just changes direction, it's not wrong or anything, you didn't break it, but what has happened is the orientation of that joint and your control curve are not the same. So when it's constraining it, it is trying to match the orientation. Orient Constraint is looking at your 3 rotation axes. So it is trying to match them. So it turns the joint so it matches it. Now there are ways to go about and do and fix it beforehand if you wish, but the simplest way to get around it is if you undo, I can open the option box for my Orient Constraint, and I can tell it to maintain offset. Check that very first little box. And again, what this is going to do is it's going to ignore if your rotation axes are different from each other. It's just going to apply it straight as is. So I can add, now I'm not flipping. Again, if your rig is set up that all your orientations are the same, that won't happen. But if it does, just maintain your offset. So visually what you're looking for now to see if it worked, your joint should have blue information in the channel box over on your rotations. Because again, Orient Constraint is for rotations. Blue represents constraint. Blue is a good color. If you ever see green over here, green's bad. Green, you've done something wrong. But blue's good. And if I select my little head control, and I go to rotate head control, I'm now going to be able to turn and rotate my head. So I'm going to repeat the process as I move down the body. I'm going to select my neck control, shift select my neck joint, constrain, orient. Again, since I hit maintain offset last time, it's going to keep that history for me and it's going to do it every single time. So get chest control, shift select that center chest joint. If you're using the same command over and over again, you can just hit G, G as in go gadget arm, I guess, and it will repeat your tool. So I've got my constraint again. Alright, so again, spine 4 control, shift select spine 4, G to constraint again, spine 3, shift select spine 3 joint, G to constrain, the first spine, constrain, the root, oh, that's still spine 1, sorry, got one more spine, constrain. The root is something different, skip over the root, go to the bottom for your hip control, select that, again, the main hip joint. You're not doing both of them, you're just doing the main hip joint, constrain. Again, the bottom hips, what that is looking for is you're now going to be able to rotate and shake your hips. With the idea that that reverse foot and everything that we set up before, it keeps the foot locked in place but bends your character's knee. Again, my right leg doesn't have any IKs on it, so it's flipping out over there, having some fun. But this is the movement you are looking for. So your final one, the actual, again, root control on its own, the one in the center that's going to be using to control everything, is not an Orient constraint. And the reason being is we need more control than that. The Orient constraint controls all of your rotations for you. But this is the root. This is the control that we're going to grab to move the whole character forward, backward from the center of your character, the center of gravity. So Orient doesn't do enough. We need the move information as well. So instead of Orient, we're going to use the parent constraint. Same order of selection. Select your root control, shift select your root joint. Again, they should all highlight. And up at the constraint menu, we're doing parent. Now again, if something flips on you, something turns, go back and maintain offset so that way you can keep everything in line. And now they're all set up with each other. Now, something else that you should do, and hopefully will still let me, I apologize if it doesn't, is we didn't freeze transformations on any of these guys. Again, you move stuff around, you reshaped it, we need to make sure we freeze transforms on those cuts. And oh good, it still lets us do it at this order. So select all your curves, go up to your modify menu and freeze transformations. Again, if you remember from before, freeze transformations on curves sets all of your translates back to 0, all of your rotates back to 0, gives it as this new starting point. So everything's constrained, but now we need to parent them together. Again, if you even look at your outliner, we've got a whole bunch of things on here. We want to see just one, the root control. So we're going to start parenting these curves together, so as you bend your character's spine, the rest of the spine follows with it. If right now you try to grab one of the ones in the middle, it's going to look kind of funky. It's like, well, it's moving, but it's not really the way it's supposed to. So if we parent these, it'll work much nicer. So for parenting, you're going to be working from the top of the head down towards the root. Of looking at top of the head, my little angel halo is the child, and I'm going to shift select the neck curve, the neck control, and this is just regular parenting, just P on the keyboard for parent. And then I'm going to continue down the line, grab my neck, shift select my chest control, P for parent, chest, shift select my spine 4 control, P for parent, and then move down. Again, the other ones should still remain green, showing the hierarchy chain that they are now parented to each other. Grab my spine, spine to root. Now when you get down to hips, again, don't accidentally do it out of order. Hips do need to be parented to the root control. Again, the root is the topmost one. successfully, when you select your root control, your largest control circle, all of the others should be highlighted. If I go to move it, all of the skeleton joints should be moving with it. And again, the idea that now if I go to rotate any, they will now rotate with each other, rotate staying in the controls, much smoother motion. This is success. This is what you want to see. So we'll be able to turn from our shoulders, turn her head, looking around. This is success. And that's your spine. Again, it's using Orient constraints. Again, except for the root control circle will be the parent constraint because we can rotate, we want the rotation, but we also need the translation, the moving attribute selected. And that's your spine. Wasn't that nice and easy? You know, compared to a lot of the other stuff we've done. So I hope you enjoyed. This one again be a nice little quicker one to kind of work up your character's spine. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. Again, please subscribe so you can see the rest of the rigging tutorials that are coming up. We're going to have another quick version on rigging the hand. We're going to do one for the arms, which will be a little bit more complicated. And then after that, we should have skinning, which I know a lot of people are excited to see. So thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next tutorial.